Hey y'all, so we are in Genesis 49. We're going to be about at the end of it, and then we're going to do a little bit of 50. So what's just come before is we're studying our patriarchs. So we've had Abraham, we've had Isaac, now we've got Jacob. Jacob is at the end of his life. He's with all of his boys, right? And he gives them each blessing. Some of them we could consider anti-blessings, right? They seem like they're not blessings right away, but at the end of the day, because these blessings are not only for the boys, but for the tribes that are going to come from Israel, from Jacob, right? There's sometimes we have to have some of them that aren't in leadership because of various actions, because of things that happen. So it begins to establish an order. But we're at the end of our patriarch study as we're reading. So let's go into Genesis 49:29 and see what's going on with Jacob after he does the blessings. And he charged them and said unto them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers in a cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is in Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham brought with the field of Ephron the Hittite for a possession of burying a place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and of that cave is therein was from the children of Heth. And when Jacob made an end of his commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed, and yielded up the ghost, and was gathered unto his people. So at the end of one's life, often you think about like where you came from, right? Some people will say where you come from and they think of a place. I think of two people. And Jacob was in that state of mind as he comes to the end of his life, right? He thinks of Abraham, he thinks of Sarah, he thinks of Isaac, he thinks of Rebekah, and he thinks of Leah, all buried in that one place. And Jacob spent his entire life wrestling with God. In fact, sometimes commentaries will say, why is it sometimes we call him Jacob even after he's named Israel and sometimes not? And you could say that that's because he still wrestled with God. And when he wrestled with God, we called him Jacob, because he was wrestling his whole life from the womb with his brother to the time that he actually wrestled with God and dislocated his hip to really his struggles throughout life to win his wife, to build his family. But at the end of his life, in that last verse, we heard that he said he gathered up his feet into the bed and yielded up the ghost. So there's something about the end of his life as we see him pass away that he's no longer wrestling with God, that he's found a peace as he turns back home. And then let's talk a little bit about his kids and what happens next. Let's see Joseph's reaction to this. And Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him. And in fact, when we go to bury the father, let's listen to who all comes with them. And Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of the Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, and all the house of Joseph, and his brethren, and his father's house, only their little ones, and their flocks, and their herds, they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company. So here, like, because of Joseph's station in Egypt, there's this big entourage, a big funeral procession for Jacob coming home. And it seems to be that when someone passes, one person takes charge, and it seems Joseph did that here in this time. However, after the funeral, if we go to verse 14, 50:14, and Joseph returned into Egypt, and his brethren, and all that went up with him to bury his father, after he had buried his father. So then they all returned to Egypt, and in that we see the other piece of Jacob wanting to be buried back in Israel, because that burial place, those are God's people that are still in Israel, and for 400 years, Joseph and his people are going to start to serve the Egyptians, and they're going to grow strong, but they're also going to be servants for 400 years, and they won't go back home to where Isaac and Abraham and Rebekah and Sarah and Jacob and Leah were buried, right? Not until out of the river comes a small baby who's going to be given the name Moses. Then things will change with an Exodus. All right, all. Thanks for joining me in our study of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Happy Sunday, chatting at Cheesman. Happy Sunday.